Well, hello there, audience. It's me again. Today we are going over something along the line of the last few videos. And you hold on just 1 second, and I'll be right back. Just hold on. And I'm back here. All right. So, like the other videos that we have or I've been hosting for the past week or so, today's video was about the same thing here. This one, just like the other one, are abstract, relatable. And then, I'm going to give a moment here. Um, if you just weren't ready, I'm going to fine tune pitch the video so that it can never be used against the real idea. So that's 440 a note, basically A440. So that's been fine tune and pitch. So the video is entitled today. Let's go into it. Should mass shooting victims have metal, silver, mercury, tin fillings? And you say, hold on, like that doesn't really make sense. Let me fine tune pitch it myself. But not in the case of the obstruction coming out, the fear factor, which is the biggest thing. Can I do you harm? Somebody, a dental assistant, dentist, brand new to the job field, says, I could put metal fillings in someone's mouth, and you could do it the same to me. Not so much, because when you go down to the textbook, mercury kills. Mercury dissolves cells, just like it does in teeth, because it's made out of mercury. So the obstruction here isn't so like open and close. The idea behind mass shootings and the idea of mercury doesn't really go together. But when you look at it on paper, not everyone's psychotic. Everyone's born in a home filled with a satanic father, a satanic mother that says, "Hey." It gives you the right to go out and kill, or go the right to dissect animals like Jeffrey Dahmer, go kill. But a serial killer, like a mass shooting shooter, is a completely different sectional thing. And then when you're looking at the victims here, completely different as well. So I mean, you have opportunity, you have to gain, right? And you have opportunity itself as a mass shooting victim in like a school or business or some other place. You're spending your time and money doing something. Well, the victim here in the serial killer's case, which is different but kind of real, is obstructive towards finding victims and then going and killing them. A mass shooter, has its mindset on a few things that are, to kill, to take the rage out, but it's all effective as a meme, right? It's not like you could pick one versus the other of the fork, or could you? I mean, the point of the reality is you can't interchange someone saying or interchange words like saying mass shooter is not a mass shooter victim. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't, or nor it will work that way. Or saying I'm afraid of that word, so don't bring it up, and say like trigger. It doesn't work that way. They're all void ideas. They're not conceptual. They're not real. They're not fragile in a way, but they're so contingent on you giving pain, giving suffering, that it just clearly matters. There's no weekend off. There's no day off. There's no week that you'll rest and say, hey, the progress you had within 3 hours of time with your last lecture, or your last assignment. I mean, your assignment or your mediation is completely different now than it was before. But when you think about the spur of the moment, saying, hey, one wrong doesn't make one right, but one right makes it a good weekend. Not exactly when it comes to mass shooting, right? There are facts that build up to it. There are case studies, and we looked over a little bit of the topic and themes, and there's not very much relative information to be gone, but we do know, and a few of the videos we found, there's a span of time, there's equidistance, there's markings, there's way to longitudinally or latitudinally, if that's like kind of a design word, to find something. But then you're finding, namesake, you're finding a passion, but you're also finding a way, this person's on the lowest of the low end, but the toppest or the highest, right? Something. So this doesn't really even out or equal out. Even in your mind, you might say, hey, I already knew that, but did you know that? Did you know that, like, when you add, Coca-Cola, and then you put a screw top on it, and you put, something like a Pepsi Cola, would it be different? I bet you didn't know that. I bet there would be like a war fought over that. But the reality there, again, like, most people who observe themselves, like, with these experiments or like STEM fields or these ideas of putting two and together, doesn't always work out, right? Like, just like a normal person would say, like, it doesn't work out turning my assignment in on cardboard. Of course, if your teacher was like, that enlightened, maybe they'd be like, yeah, today I will let you do it if you can photograph it, and have the computer like draw over the characters, and then lorem ipsum, there you are. Your piece of paper is whole, and it is not so fragile as a cardboard piece anymore. It is real. But not every teacher is like that, and you might meet the bitter end of the teaching, or bitter end, and then might say, hey, I'm outlandish today, but I'm actually going to reach out, or I'm going to branch out, or what's the word, cry out for attention, or put some sort of other obstruction in front of me and say, we don't need that anymore. We're going to take it up to another notch of crime and crime world, right, or crime freeze. So, I mean, there's that, but, there is the potential of, there's factors, variables that make no sense, kind of like the variable, like long tail, quartile we were talking about. It is a range, right, is proper theory, right? I mean, in relative statistics, we're looking at history still, and those history books basically are very, very general, and have technology back the way they do now. I mean, they have, had metals they could find on the ground. They could have little things, but when you look at basic things, they didn't have computers. They had books, maybe. They didn't have a lot. I mean, the Nazis were known for skinning their opponents and keeping a crawl of hunter space to show that they had killed. They just choose people. You can change your idea anytime you want, or your realism. So there's that. So another relationship, you could share or you could follow is, despise. You despise somebody who does something bad for you, does something bad to you. You might feel like it's a different place. One sticks to your heart, one sticks to your muscle, right, or your strum, right. And it might be the worst, right? The girl breaks up with you. The teacher gives you an F. You flunk out of school. You get a bigger F and say, "Easy F, brother. You've been expelled." Or some weird residual, thinking, right? The business center might not hire you, but then back in your mind you say, he's a bad guy, don't work for him. Or you truly know he's a bad guy, a child molester, or what seems to be a child molester in a group full of areas full of child molesters area. But the point of it is that yes, you can disprove something. Yes, you don't have to stay mad for the rest of your life, and yes, there are other ways to get rid of your fear, your mindset, your anxiety, whatever a idea would come to your mind, whatever you want it to be. It doesn't have to be so fretful. It doesn't have to be you're the one that makes the decisions for my brain cells, so therefore make it. It doesn't work that way. You're finding a realistic narration, just like anyone else, but you're finding a way not to despise something. Finding a way to create fear, create day. As you put it, you're not God. You're not overlord or something, like you're not a slave owner, right? So pretty general, right? So I mean, you could say like, hey, this person's ticked somebody off, and that's what we found out. All mass shooters were ticked off. Like, not really. And when I use tick, I mean like they're already badasses or bad guys, and they already got ticked off, and so they tipped over the world and said, enough is enough. It doesn't clearly work that way. But when you look at the reality of facts of like SCOTUS says, or they do this, I could take the case folder. Even though this is that and that is that, some people might be crazy. They might be drug offenders in that case. They're saying they're more likely to offend. Are they more likely to do something in the situation? Are they? Well, you got to look at the meaning of drugs. You got to look at who's using the drugs. Are you looking at habitual users who are using like psychedelics and are like hallucinating or something, or speed and hallucinating, or like some sort of amphetamine or some upper, right? I mean, the probability of that possibly happening, I mean, it's high, right? But is it high like anything else? I mean, you drink 300-year-old oils, or 300-year-old, 500-year-old, 1200-year-old vinegars or something. I mean, what's the difference, right? I mean, one is hallucinogenic, one is hallucinogenic. I mean, some religions do that, and it's becoming more perceptive over time as more people are sharing things, more people are relating to things that are just in pain, and the economy is going to debt. And what is debt? People buying things that they don't need, just sticking in space, right? Clean, right? So yes and no to that question. I mean, the same question goes for can you go to the store every day and spend money? In this country, probably not. I mean, probably will not have enough money to survive at least the first 2 weeks of the month, the first week of the month, half the month, 2 months down the line. You probably go into debt. So there's a relationship there as some sort of spunking or spuffing, like you're finding a way to rearrange the technology or idea behind going somewhere. Well, yeah, I mean, it might say or it sound different or indifferent, but when you look at your attention and you build your attention in front of something else, you're finding a relationship, right? You're finding a relationship to do something that's common, that's even, that meets your needs, your schedule. But usually those are things that are moving. Those are like datas that are like a video stamp data. It's like helping you go along the way. And we call it, in the United States, at least in America, we call it the program. You go to the program, you kind of tuned in. But is there an easy way to exit the program? Not really. It can be as simple as anxiety, depression, a notch of them. And it's not just good in schizophrenia because, again, schizophrenia does not mean you cannot be cured. It does not mean you can no longer have a relationship with the world. It does not mean that you know it all when you say, I quote unquote have defined schizophrenia. It doesn't exactly work. It's about the mentality or morality of the group, structure to think, right? You're using the thinking skills as a way to find a way and to develop those ideas, fine tune them in your mind. Not so much like this video, because this video is perceptive. It's a reality behind thinking crisis at all. And some of the challenges is the idea of the group think. They probably do not know much about psychology or anticipation versus participation, which is a very broad, basic thing in psychology, sociology, and any pageant science. Because the relationship there is strong, and it shows that the relationship between thinking skills and non-thinking skills are critical in a way, right? Which means like to try to earn ethic to participate. So there's a few quite exquisite things about it. But when we go into the relationship between work ethic, we're not talking about being a protected clause, a perception, right? You're a person or individual, and it doesn't mean you're not a dog. It doesn't mean anything, right? You're looking at the perception of you, or maybe your business or something, as a way to make a means to do something, do like working ethic, things like that. But you're breaking into this culture of making money. You're breaking the culture just like any person might be, and we're going over to a little bit of the video. So a lot of these things is casualties, or what you consider words that don't really fit together, very similar. Casualties or casual need based, and then there's like casuality, like kind of a spur of bad, dead, gross, bad things, right? So the perception or the pertkas, the procedure or idea, the idea is that no one can have a relative safety net without it, right? Without money, you can't just go say, hey, look at me. This is the back of the FBI fake agent card I bought, and I'm a pretend FBI agent. And this is just for views on this YouTube channel. Like, yeah, you could say it as obstructive as possible. You're a researcher. You're finding anticipation for the faultiness of quality of life, and then fixing that, like an FBI agent would. But you're not. So these fine-tuned moments, you find a reality behind a couple things. Making money, finding a way to survive. And as a human, you don't want to survive. You don't want to find some sort of a bridge, idea that will make things somewhat better, but you have to sacrifice something and willing to get it. But it has to mean pain. Well, not while the other individuals say, oh, we get free money. I mean, it might be the Native Americans. It might be somebody on some sort of receptive grant program that allows you to do certain things. And a lot of these programs, obviously, you can't go to school at the same time. So you're kind of like in a screwed situation. You're like, I'm left for dead or live with my parents, or I give it something I need. What could that be? And then or you go through these like loopholes, or you go through these perception. What's a loophole? Like, the loophole is just like, it's not textbook. It's not a textbook case. It's not a rational case. It's not a relationship that holds, normal words in a normal setting. And or else it would be maybe secure and insecure. But the problem there is, what is insecure and secure when it comes to having to do with emotion? Like, I have no idea. Does it have to do power, control, ethic? I mean, none of these things quite fit together as though they're clauses, but as textbook goes, there isn't one, umbrella that says, oh, this is the notch for that, or this is, the way you think about that. It doesn't tell you, what to do. And, one of these videos from the 70s, 60s, or 50s that says, this is the memoir of, what would happen if there was a mass casualty. This is what you're going to find it. And if you find it, let me know. But there really is pretty much a blank. You hit that in the search topic. Hit a bunch of news stories that says, yeah, another one. Another one after that, another one after that. Oh, there was actually two today. Oh, and then there was like, back when you talk to somebody nowadays, 10 years ago, they're like, oh, I wish none of this. Or like, 15 years ago, I was none of this. And kind of, just so, yeah. And then the spur of the moment comes on, the commercial's like, yes, I got to send you. I understand. Buy what you need to buy now, because that's what matters more. The little brand placing right in the back, or they'll say, hey, watch this. You get this, and Netflix pops on and goes, this song. What's the song goes? It goes. Oh, but don't get frame worked for that one. The Netflix documentary song, and goes, and then I think it's On a Mission by Dumbo, whatever that means. And then you go and say, hey, is this thing on? And you go, I was the one to first respond in a terrorist attack, but it wasn't a terrorist attack overseas. It was a terrorist attack here. And then you're like, yeah, the whole operation cost a whole arm and leg. And, it was a whole difficult process, but, at least they got this hat. And like, no, it really doesn't work that way, especially with the naivety. I mean, that's not even a word. So I mean, that might even be another episode that's as appropriate as the other ones. Should mass shooting victims wear unicorn hats? Who knows? Or mass casualty victims wear unicorn hats? So think about the probability there of is something going good with that situation. Really nothing will go good about it. From what perspective? That third, first perspective? I have no idea. That's one of those things I would just blank out on. I think I would ask a computer to do it. I think typically, when you look back at the textbook, English teachers probably would abridge this information with information they just would not know. Even the history of tech, probably the last 25 or so years. Probably. So the perception there, it's critical. It's quite critical. And the reality there is about, pure mentality. Of course, it's sticking point because a lot of Americans don't have memory. When you think peer-to-peer, file sharing, think the Iraq War. Think, the bridge of, 9/11 Texas. That's about the same exact time all that, came together. It wasn't so open and closed before. It was kind of like, you do this, you do that, you do this, you do that. A lot of people making money, maybe, surviving. Maybe things have been more democratic in a way. And they have, but they are always settled as, kind of parallel points along thinking scale. They don't abridge themselves, right? They don't fall apart. They don't their own thing. We think, right? So the perception there again is, not really real. But when you look at the reality of trying to find work, that's the topic we're on. and trying to work, you're going to find a time to get insurance. You're going to find time to use money as a way to spur, what you need. Those things you need, metal filling. So when you might go to medical school, you might find there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of rivalries or rival groups, as a group think rivalries. And you'll find one dentist had a metal cap in their mouth. It's not about the metal cap just appearing in the person's mouth. It's about what's wrong, right? Right. You might find another dentist that says, "Oh," or assistant that says, "Oh, I have no problem using these metal fillings." But you find the relationship is always hooked to kind of like a statistic that says there's brain cell death. There is also organ failure when you have the metal fillings that are made of mercury, tin, and silver. Why? That's a tricky one. That's a real tricky one, and we can look into it right now. So let's look up why mercury, silver, tin fillings are toxic and dangerous. And then we'll also put in the fact that the U.S. government does not recommend. They say they're all fine, they're all good for you, but I mean at the same time, the government said no fluoride in a way. And then it also said there is a link between autism and shots, and they didn't really get to the metal filling part. They didn't get to anything else. Kind of like metal fillings, yeah. So this mercury silver fillings, known as dental elegams, raise toxicity concerns because they contain elemental mercury, which continuously releases low levels of mercury vapor that can be absorbed by the body. While health agencies note that these fillings are stable for most people, debate persists over potential long-term risks. Vapor release is one of those things. Chewing, teeth grinding, brushing, or drinking hot liquids can cause the elegam to emit microscopic amounts of invisible mercury gas. Inhalation and absorption. Lungs easily absorb this gaseous mercury. Then it enters the bloodstream and can travel to organs in the brain and kidneys. Higher amounts of vapor or particles can briefly escape during the actual filling placement or drawing out process. Neurotoxic effects. High levels of mercury exposed harm the nervous system, leading to symptoms like tremors, memory loss, anxiety, or headaches. A lot of these are attached to such and such, like a mass shooter or a crime. Some people suffer direct metal allergy showing up as oral lesions or skin rashes near the mouth. Pregnant individuals, fetuses, nursing infants, and people with pre-existing kidney disease face higher potential risk from low-dose exposure. Official standpoints, regulatory view. Major groups like the U.S. FDA consider anagrams safe for adults and children over 6, stating that the tiny amount released does not cause systematic illness in the general population. Precautionary view. Alternative groups argue that the constant exposure to heavy metal neurotoxin is undesirable and can accumulate over decades, recommending composite or ceramic alternatives instead. Do you currently have silver fillings that are damaged? Are you experiencing any symptoms you are worried about? So, from a standpoint of looking at the past, right? You're looking at a court, let's say court, a judge, a group of attorneys that have no idea what their job is or how to surround the idea of a bridge information gaps. A doctor doesn't know what they're quite doing. They don't know how to metal or measure metal, because that's their job to do experimental whatever. Right. So the potential there of finding a way to get around it. You're looking at maybe a farmer, a cook. You're looking at things to solve the fashion problem of bad foods or unkept mouth in a way. In a way, it costs money. It's a job. Do you really get paid for something like that? You rather don't. You rather don't get paid for it. But when the credit card goes for the credit card or the debit card goes for the debit card, teeth cost a bit of money. They're not like so easy to fix, right? And when you stick a piece of metal on there, cracks your denture, cracks your whatever you have fixture on there, maybe your tooth, whatever white alum on there, and it cracks part of your tooth each time. So gotta think, well, a metal filling wouldn't necessarily just kill you, but it might just crack your entire tooth and you have no more teeth. So There's one reality behind the frustration you might get as a victim. And you might go into little, fights of, who gets dental and who doesn't get dental in the time of meds. So when you're homeless, you're poor, and we'll get into the why it's relative towards, what we're talking about, which is being a victim of a mass survived attack. You might find that, the more and more constipated or real the idea is weighted, you find that the metal fillings start to loosen your bowel. They start to do certain things that medicine would do, or since it's mercury, poison would do. You might have tremors, you might have heart rushes, but then you realize you can no longer eat, you can no longer do certain things because there's poison in your mouth. When you go through this loop, you find a reality behind casualty and success, right? You're finding a way to stick with ideas and features and thoughts that are less successful, that have way more impact in the world. When you go the opposite way and you have, let's say, basic things that do not cause serious problems in the denture. I'm not saying everybody had the ability to regrow their teeth, so far in these experimental trials, but when you look at the reality and you look at the topple down, each and every step is finding a way to go and find people who are user tempted, who are in this population. That's everyone in the population pretty much has the fair right, understanding that their teeth are not taken care of. It's this medical insurance thing that just doesn't happen. But you're the top, as you put it, but as time goes and the population gap kind of widens, you realize that, there's a lot less rich people in the world. And some of the people are fairly wealthy, right? Some of the people, but they are on this some sort of systematic reality, or they may be in the military or in a tribe or something from the Native Americans, or, maybe have some relationship with the business. But when you look at the gap there are a lot less business owners in the world than there are those other two. Or the relationship between making money, which we didn't go to, which is sole proprietorship. You're working for a company. And there's a lot of people who do that, but it's makeshift, right? So, you saying like, hey, I find a way to work and make money is good. No one's going to say anything about it. But, when you ask, for steady workforce, you don't get it. When you ask for a steady job, you don't get it. When the management receives the conquest to ask, hey, will you lighten the work so more people can work and then have a better relationship with these second jobs, these second understandings of work? They won't have it. Why? Because the relationship there is not about money and time. It's about work shift and hours, work power, basically. Relationship there might be, a question of bilingual identity, or relationship between acknowledgement and cognitive support, and those are the bigger ones. But when you look at the branch out effectiveness, because anyone can think any thought, and that's the biggest thing, you're looking at a quality of data versus an acceptance of data. You're like, hold on. You said acceptance of data, quantity of data, and acceptance of data. Yeah, you're not looking at quality versus quantity. You're looking at quantity of data versus acceptance of data. So when you look at quantity of data, what is the quantity of data, right? Digital data is measured using specific units from bits to zettabytes, reflecting a global digit volume exceeding 149 zettabytes. So that is really nothing to do with what we're talking. We're talking about the physical. What about the physical world? And this might be considered the exo, there might be regional support, and there's plenty of ways to put it. The total physical mass of the digital data currently on Earth is practically weightless, weighing only between 1 and 50 micrograms, less than a single grain of fine sand. This does not really count it. There's no abstract thinking there. There's no acknowledgement. It's just physical weight of an idea, basically. Data is stored, electronic method. So you're finding that another realization between the quantity of data, and if we define quantity, let's define that one. not of data, but of just the quantity of the word quantity. And you could technically apply stacks to anything, and that is the point of a matrix. That is the point of effort, right? That's how, in modern people we apply multiplication, how we apply secondary variables, roots. So let's define quantity. Quantity means an amount, number, or measure of something. It tells us how much or how many of the item is substance of an item or substance exists. So key idea is counting and measuring. It represents values you can count, like 5 apples, or measure like 2 liters of water. Math and science. In math, it is a value or a number that shows magnitude. In science, it is a property that you can write down with a number and a unit, such as 10 kilograms, versus quality. Quantity focuses on the amount of something, while quality focuses on how good or bad it is. If you meant a specific kind of quantity, tell me, are you looking for math? So received perception of this quantity, or what might consider a break, a reality, charts. I mean, there's many things you would use for quantity, but you wouldn't use medium or median for those things. You wouldn't use a way to count or score the exact measure of something, and that is the quality of data we're looking at, the X variable. It's called the X factor. The X, and it will not catch on in your mind because it uses the word zing, and we're looking at something that might technically disintegrate your mouth. So the zing word is quite real. It's an abbreviation for 1.0, so oil. You're saying the oil word. So when you look at the zing, the equation of quantity versus factor, you're looking at a breakaway, a sectional, a response. Then you said you did that already, and you're proving yourself wrong. Well, not exactly. With the quality of data, some things exist in the world on a level that we all use, and some things just don't. Like alcohol is one of those things, but we're not really getting into that, brigade kind of thinking skill. We're not all joining DARPA here, and we're not all starting a super science business that is built on insanity itself, or the gestation of beyond all sulfur. But now that people are poisoned and had bad food and had a bad COVID pandemic, stomach, and said, enough is enough. It doesn't really work that way. So, there's a huge reality gap behind, quantity versus the acceptance word. Quantity meaning what you have, what you are settled with, what you are finding a reason to do. And the thing has changed from the quantity to finding a way to strengthen or find commitment. But a lot of people think there is. So let's look at the word acceptance. And you're looking at acceptance of data, right? Acceptance is the act of receiving something offered, the approval of an idea or person, or the mental process of recognizing a real life situation without fighting it. Psychological meaning, facing reality, not giving up. Active mindset, legal and business meaning, contract, spanking. Radical acceptance, legal rules are just a few, etc. But the reality there of finding a stake, acceptance, you're finding a reality change, right? A reality change that is a makeup of something. But when you get in these fights, these little fights, it doesn't always meet your demands, right? It doesn't always meet your fictional quota. Right? You sell something like a cell phone for a lot of money, it might make somebody upset, and it might have been a lot of work for somebody else, and they might have gotten ripped off, making it, or the factor of wage change there, especially within international countries, things like that. It might just be conclusively, within a contract, it just splits the tea there. So let's look at over the few other ideas of how these kind of ideas fit together and how on earth they relate to something as simple as getting mad one day, getting even, finding a basis for what they may consider being a victim. Right? And the victim, it could be multiple things. You could be a victim, sideline victim. You could be sharing a relationship between what you don't want to share, what you find a relationship of, why you're affected, why you would speak, about something that should not share a relationship. I mean, kind of and kind of not. That's the thinking point of another group that says, violence should be never exposed to children. It should never be exposed to certain people because, it's limiting is one thing, but then also that it shares no coincidental data. However, that one has been very disproven, for as it's a interlope, you're interloping fear versus data, as though all things are the same or similar because they are potentially vulnerable areas, right? That doesn't mean every muscle is the same, has the same vulnerability. It doesn't mean, every gesture is the same vulnerability, but it does mean that they would like it to be the same. But, you look at different things like, does your eyesight mean the same thing? Does your data about, consensual matters mean the same thing? And then you go straight to the thing, why isn't all, IDs the same, right? If all IDs are the same or all, constructs, thinking skills were the same, why isn't everyone the same then? Like, I don't know. I think some genetics are different than other genetics. And I think most people think, yeah, but then they think, I've been brought up to believe in some sort of stigma. So that's the bigger quality of finessing. But the problem there is also, is that right to think about, somebody as a genetic, error, thinking about somebody as, a perceptive reality? I would say no. Usually most people hate that. They hate that the most. So it's just kind of like data. So once you're on the list, as they put it, you're always on the list, right? So once you have these mercury fillings to your mouth, you're always weighted, right? Most rappers have fillings in their mouth. They might have like gold teeth, they might have something else, but the reality there is there's a relationship between this data. So let's go on the next questions here. I mean, I don't think this is even big enough, even a little bit. Let's see if I can enlarge it. Maybe it being larger. Okay, and if you were like, yeah, I have metal teeth, and kind of like, there's not really much you can do about it, unless you really wanted to regrow these teeth of yours. So, still a little lag there. All right. So the next question here in this list of questions of like, the makeshift idea about this territory or whatever it is, of being a mass shooting victim this time around, should they be denied the privilege to speak from families or friends about being a victim or their experiences? And like you say, take a hand up and say like, yes, or you kind of go around town and say like, oh, no. Kind of go like with a bigger grin that makes you look like Chucky or evil or just some satanic creature. Yes, no. In real world, we say freedom of speech, freedom of safety, all these little things. We don't really say it like that, but we kind of go like, yeah. But then you hear it in the back of your voice, that disgruntled city look of like, there's a lot of haters in the city, or there's a lot of haters that are cops, or like people who don't really get this fright or fear situation too, right? And you're like, yeah, they need some help, or emotionally they look like they're stir, or they're a little whirly, or like they're on drugs or something, or they're about to kill somebody, right? You can be honest. I mean, they seem a little bit suspicious. In a normal world, in a normal country, if someone were to ask you that question, you'd probably say, "You're a spy. You're a straight up spy." What do you do with spies? You either arrest them or you take the spies out. So I mean, let's slow down there, as though you'd say a normal country of like everybody's neutral and no one's at war and nobody's at fragile sense. And I feel like this is a video coming on, but the reality there is spies don't always die, and then the cases there's a few cases right now that says spies should not die; they should serve time. But the expense of what, and what spy is better than what spy? I mean, what spy is what spy? I mean, we're talking about something that doesn't even make sense right now. So, would the quality of mass shooting be relatable to spies? In my mind, I say there's a huge correlation. These are huge missing points on a graphic chain that just don't make sense. So, you know, in reality, I'd say, yeah, mass media and spy work, I don't see why it wouldn't go together. It just doesn't even make sense that it wouldn't, show relationship at all. As a relationship would say, like, oh, your spy got out of hand and he started, mounting towards finding ways to mass shoot people or kill them in their homes. Like a serial killer would, and you've been hiring him the whole time. I mean, gosh, no, I mean he's not a spy. He's gonna die for what he believes in. And there you go with that Jolly Roger and that drum set. You were about to buy. It's a silence time. But that clock keeps ticking, whereas what I like to say that talk keeps on clicking. I thought about it, the Calarm lock keeps on working. So, yeah, so you shouldn't interrupt your family member who has been through this kind of thing. You should not, find rage and, thinking over the thoughts of like, oh, this person was in a mass shooting and they had to look again. Oh, no, not today. And there's moments of silence and kind of like, as time goes, I think I'm adopted, or I think I'm, in a relationship with, family that is confused. And here the idea is in which I think they're confused. I think they were adopted. I think, in reality, they were confused. I think I'm all right. I think they're confused. So, the potential is a few things. Like, do they have information for you? Do they have, a relationship that you don't know about? But the problematic, issue there is, should they have the right to deny you from speaking, right? That's a tricky one. So, like, let's say you were in a mass shooting, a school shooting, or something like that, and like, given 3 to 6 months later, you're kind of in an even mess, or let's say in your college environment, you know better than to act like a kid anymore. You're very obedient to your parents. You've been through an experience, and then it's better. Or let's say you've been to rehab, or what they consider crisis rehab, right? That's what they call it nowadays. And you're kind of going through the spur of the moment. You're involved with this. Is one different than the other, right? Is this spectacular, reason of going to high school and going to this event and placed into some sort of denied, right to speak? Or is it different from, finding yourself, out of school or in college or, in this rehabilitation? You'd say no for a lot of them, but then automatically each and every one, and they might say no now, not that they know this. They might say, yeah, there's a relationship there, but, the one out, the one who took the drug should not be in. And when you give it a moment's silence, you're like, yeah, that stigma has stuck around for a long time, right? The school kids have dreamed about being CEOs. The college kids have dreamed about, being the ones to make the money now, right? And then a person going to rehab is bound to be plentiful in a way. Either you're in or out, right? You're in the business, you're getting out, or you're in the rehab and you're getting into something that doesn't quite fit together. You're in the workforce program in your mind, but what if that never sticks around? What if the funding is bad? What if it was never QT to the start, right? And you're like, yeah, that starts with a zero. So what do we do with things that are started with a zero according to law and modern ethic? It means those things belong in prison. They are captured. They're ideas that are like basically like a capture card, and they have no significant value, right? So if you look through a tumbled DNS report and you find these little figures that say, oh, it's just starting off, the function is right. No, it's more of like a blooper, a blimp. It says like, prisoner A, prisoner B, or prisoner 1 was working on this technology today as their job was access development technology. And like, oh, that makes a lot more sense. My prison tab said, I couldn't really log into this data, but I couldn't really do this or that. The potential of finding a value that is quite, and if you're square with me, you'd understand. If you find a potential value that is 0 versus 1, I mean, in the programmer sense of like looking through data, to saying, oh, this is that and that is this, you're finding a reason, a relationship. Are prisoners related to, type in info? I don't know. I don't work in the prison field, but I do know they do documentation. I know companies hire certain people because there's less money, right? But the potential there, you're looking at a focus that is deliberate. In a way, it's kind of like putting a quotation in front of or after things. You're like, I'll sabotage them this way, and I'll get my money. Well, not all water pipes break, and not all programs just stop working. So, but some hosts for computer programs and cloud computing, they always did it badly, and they always did it in the ring, or they always collected the things they shouldn't collect, and they might go to prison. So. There's that. So when you look at the big world versus the smallest world, is doing one thing wrong, and that led to anticipation, or in a way you're going to shock maybe the addiction speaking. I might say the addiction spoke to you, right? So might have been the cigarettes, might have been the coffee. Yeah, I know a lot of mom and dads still have coffee back at home, and the grandparents of the kids are yelling at you. So the potential there, big think, big world. But the reality is you got to find a way to fit it in. So I mean, looking at selective data here, but the selective data is about being an individual, being broken from the home, and of course, the policy. Yeah, the policy is you don't live in your home. Yeah, it's America with the parents. Right? It's just gradually. It's never happened. It's never territory that's just perfect, pitch perfect. There might be the occasional singer out there with their parent in the military, and they're just hey young on being happy all the time. They might say God rules or something, but the reality is it has little to do with Jesus. It has a little to do with God. It has really what to do with now, safety, politeness, happiness now, right? It has to do with a lot of things, but when you look at the potential outfit or the outliness of you getting a job from 9 to 5 and going into the corporate world is very slim. You're looking at big corporations that have been built from the top up, unlike it was reported many times. But you're finding a way that it's starting to stay uninformed, or the relationship between work and reality is not real, especially like wages. You're looking at wages, you're looking at earned potentials that are just often off. Like you're not getting a door-to-door sales. You're getting commission based some places, but you're making score little money. You're making some little money that you are putting money into the work in which you don't have to. Just like government agencies saying, "Work for me, don't work for me. I'll deny this passage here. You don't have enough credit." Or you can't drive the car. But the relationship there is, why is there no relationship at all if there's already a relationship? So there you go. There is a first time for anything, but I might just say it's already happened. So let's go to the next question, as that one can't really be answered by one person for everyone, right? In some sort of weird way, but the potential there is probably fixed by the other questions. Do you think someone should be able, and like talk to me like I was Cash Patel or something, the FBI lead, not the president, but just kind of like a director. Obviously, I'm not the director, but I just wanted to bring up to the proper channels that this is irony at its finest. Do you think someone should be able to gather more facts than someone who experienced the mass shooting and wait for the proper channels and law enforcement to release to respond to findings with no given timeline? So, do you think you should give them the information so that you could get information about the reality of them? Do you think someone should be? Oh, someone should be able to. So the relationship there, it's a focus of. It's kind of in your hands. I think. I mean, if it's about life and death, yeah. I think you should share the data a little bit, and then if you're looking at the question of asking for help, absolutely, I think you should be able to get help. So like let's say you're like in Florida or something, and you're with a lot of people who are in risky jobs. And one thing about risky jobs, a lot of people who might be on certain lists or things like that might take on more. Sometimes it's about relationship between work and safety. You're getting the loophole, and then you get to go do the workshop. A shout out to those who are doing that right now. But the reality, not all ideas, speak to you. I mean, hurting someone obviously doesn't speak to you, and obviously shouldn't, right? I mean, hurting people is far from what you should do. Hurting people is far away from what you do. But it gives you that warning again that says, don't trust this person, don't trust that person, definitely trust the person who's lying all the time, or at least piecing together things. And this is also a learning experience. You're learning that not all viral media is the same. Not all viral media exists for the same reason. Not all viral media looks the same. And when you're looking on the list, I mean, you're looking almost like at 4chan for the evidence and proof and faith. And nothing has been really evident or factualized since then. You might look at the 50 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, but who did that one? Right, Mr. Green did that one. Who put in the hours and the work ethic for that? I mean, you're looking at critical information at the finest of the fine, because when you look at bigger things, let's say the Orlando mass shooting, or let's say the Las Vegas mass shooting or anything else, even the Boston bombing, you're looking at big facts versus big earnings, right? I mean, and what I mean, these are all a Hollywood stars, except I mean the Stupid Paddock one, and you know, Las Vegas wouldn't really have any movies about it, and the reality, the principle is driving people crazy, right? In their eyes, they're striked by fear by the government, but in their eyes, they said I've been wrong so many times by little people who've hurt me so much or done so much. They might have sold my sister into sex prostitution or done some sort of capable thing. They might have been an officer, and they said gee whiz, they wouldn't sit down the first time I asked them. They said the second time they're going to lash out at me. Like, gosh, that probably doesn't sound too good. It sounds pretty awful to me, right? In the preparation world, Chef Ramsay, whoever it is, might go to work and say, I'm the modern cook. I'm going to do the modern thing, and I'm going to create an outlook that might, be good for everybody. But in the end, I don't want to be the one who's cooking. I mean, it might be a fast time, it might be a free spirit pitch, but the way you grew up is to play, softball, to play little league, to do something new, modern, and find something as a way to appropriate for what you're going to do, or stay appropriate. I mean, it is, you're not returning back to the old days, right? Even though every day you kind of say, one, I didn't do that. Two, I didn't do that. Three, I didn't do that. Four, that I didn't do that. And the music reminds you about, how, what, the music you might say is, to find pitch you, but you're finding a way, to tread into the past life, right? And it gets harder and harder every day. And that fine-tuned pitch, doesn't stay even. The diamond is worth more, and, it's more difficult to survive than ever, right? And then out of all of that outcry, you say, every little thing seems right now like it's related towards the bad guy and how they made their money, right? You ask them like, who's the rich benefactor in your life, right? And I don't, as a voter, believe in things I don't believe in. I don't believe in them doing me wrong double. They shouldn't do me wrong double, but you should give some backstory to how you made your money the first time. And it doesn't mean everybody's related to each other. I don't really pertain to it, right? But the policy or the overhead, it doesn't really have a rule of thumb for that, but it does have a rule of thumb for disorder. But shroudly or evidently, it doesn't seem like they do any of it right when they say, oh, you've done the wrong, and you've done some wrong by not spreading false gossip. It might be like putting some really viral meme or meme or shout out loud out on the outline, but online. But the reality is fair from it. Maybe small like graffiti. I mean, basically, I'm not saying to exaggerate. I mean, there's a clear communication channel, and I think we're learning something there about that as well. But the reality is so vague it is. Like the idea of schizophrenia of be able to be arrested for a novice idea like that is the most insane nowadays. You're a boy who cried wolf during or about a mass shooting, and you don't know what's right or wrong, or you're a doctor who did that. I mean, there's a big spin over. You're taking one opponent and then you're flipping them over, saying, no, doctor, you're going to be arrested. You're going to be arrested for malpractice and conspiracy for terrorism. And you give yourself a moment of silence. You say, that's a ringer right there. That's something you bring to the DOJ right there, because it's real. Right. No one gets to tell you you're not a victim. No one gets to tell you, you're hallucinating because you're a victim. And those are very awful serial killer like ideas. Plainly put, those are bad ideas, right? But it doesn't mean to lash out. I mean, in a way, they're so confusing. You shouldn't know what to do in a situation like that because it sounds insane, basically. So, when given the timeline issue, of course, you should kind of follow police procedures, community policy. That always is the overall. And, along with that, it goes drugs, it goes, a lot of things. So you kind of take it back a little bit, so you're like, why don't you have the space you have? In business, very, very simple. You will go through it in like 3 months, 6 months. I've seen people with a bachelor's degree, like 6 months time or a little bit longer for the whole thing. I mean, it's insane. But when you're looking at the personal space, nowadays, you're looking 3 feet, 6 feet, 9 feet. Why? And it doesn't have to be quoted. You're looking at the reality of like, why you gave yourself the space in the first time. You got locked up right after the worst thing that happened to you ever, right? And it's like, well, why? Well, how would someone know who you are, what's going on in the real world? It might have been 8 years, it might have been 9 years, it might have been 10 years, but it doesn't matter the amount of time if it's, about now. You're looking at the frustration-free, policy of the government, or you're looking at, what the outcry is right now. Like, what is it, you said What is it you're doing? What is the feeling you're having? But emotionally, what if the tables are turned saying, no. What if you just get the no? So, I mean, think about, the policy, like you're snagging $1 as a big whole paycheck for somebody who's, a PI or private detective, somebody who is a cybersecurity, forte, forensic investigator, an auditor from the IRS. A lot of these people depend on very little evidence to go and get it, fetch it, and then make it secure. So when you're from the insecure side to the secure side, you don't mess around with these kind of ideas about like data with like, can I stay connected to a prisoner from the inside? Can I, manifest them and get them a job at the CEO, place working at Facebook? And there's a lot of the things that just don't really connect for an auditor or IRS captain or like whatever you want to call it. But the reality there is there's some serious depth to it, right? And if you can't make up for that $1 in your bank account, through an audit, guess where you're going to go? Eventually, you're going to get audited, and when you get audited, you're going to be like, "Oh, holy cow! I didn't know they'd catch up to that." Or you're kind of going to say, like, police officer, I didn't know I could not do all that stuff. And you're like, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure you weren't working for that agency after all, and I'm pretty sure this is fake." Or like, I'm pretty sure, yeah, this screws in 2 soda pop bottles together, but why? So, the potential there, you're doing a lot of stuff that, wouldn't make sense to a normal person, but take back a normal person who's been through a whole lot. And I'm sure like, if one of the statements and then one of the people, and if we're figuring these all together or charted together, you don't really have an idea of what that means, do you? So you kind of like, blooper. Yeah. So, I mean, the potential there might say, hey, Snap, we got you for 30 to 90 minutes of your time and we're going to do an evaluation. Yeah, but not really. You do so many evaluations, you do so many, police strategies or policies, somebody's going to collect the information. But that one quote you have, that's a serious thing in nature. What you said, then about, whatever, victimization, whatever about that to a doctor, that's all real. That sticks together like a frying pan. But if it doesn't, and if like, not the quotes are there or the reality, well, you got to think to yourself, why? Why not? Why? What's a better way to do it? If it's about drugs, what's a better way to do it? If it's about, just being, having maybe a small amount of anxiety like a normal person, you got to think, you're not had. You have to find a way to be, right? So let's go to the next question, because that's as a whole collateral of business intelligence that not even me could ace right now, I'm sure of it. So, do you think the police have to release a timeline statement regarding a mass shooter situation evaluation? I'd say yeah. I think they should always have to be way more open about that. When you look at the pedigree or the relationship between material science and functionable psyche, by far, you're looking at connectivity. The relationship between connectivity and then potential fact going by far human psyche. That is a material science thing. I mean, if materials were based on different dimensions, maybe it would be different, and that's a whole different thing, right? You're looking at a whole different system there, we would think. But the potential there is yes, absolutely, these things are connected. When you have less information, I'm not saying about Wi-Fi, but certain things. I mean, when things are fixed in place, they're fixed in place. Constitutional rights are constitutional rights. Sometimes they just don't go together. But the reality there is, yes, there's a relationship between freedom, ethic, and safety. Right. So there is a huge relationship there that says, not just for the camera being off, or not for the microphone being off, but for all of them being on. But I mean, maybe in a frustration free, you just kind of have to fine tune it over time. What works with what? What is the relationship between gravity and humans? So that might take a setting, it might take a place, it might take a story. Again, so the relationship, again, is it's cartel. You might think about it as like a timeline. You might think of it as a wait list. Maybe a wait list is a good way to put it, but is it, right? We're looking at the highest and lowest, right? So potential there is kind of even footed, maybe not, maybe a real item. Has it ever been arranged, right? I don't know. That's another question. Has the data ever been arranged right? I don't know either. So the advantage there is pretty serious there. Why would a police officer go to such great lengths to cause problems? I mean, terrorist roots. Maybe their family's Nazi. I don't know. Maybe they're in a gang or something. Huh? Maybe not. So, same as for a psychologist. Why would you make up such a lie? Maybe frustration, maybe damning facts versus evidence. I mean, maybe just losing. Maybe seeing too much dead. I mean, there's a lot of questions that would go into this interplay of why would someone not show up to work after that? Why would someone not be able to face the fear? Right. I think from a rookie perspective of rookie cop or doing something like that. I mean, if the first thing that's all you saw, it might just be the weirdest thing. It might be the scariest thing. It might be, a question of like, is it life or death or something else? But let's go to this, the more the merrier of the questions. Do you think medical response have to release a timeline statement regarding mass shooting situation? Of course, they should, and there's probably a critical infrastructure in place through like FBI, DOJ, Sheriff's Department, obviously. But when you're looking at medical facilities, there is an interloping play that says one hospital is one hospital. You're calling each hospital just like you always have. For these situations, there's no interplay saying overdose this, overdose that. Nope. This is it. This is that, and that is it. It's federal government. They don't apparently mess around with it. So quality of data is kind of like that's pretty real. But the forensic pen says if you can't look into where your neighbor lives now and you think he was a mass murderer, how would you look up that information? Record check, maybe whole thing, money. Everything's free, I guess. But you're looking county to county basically for what the Drew Sojin's playlist, and where that ends, right? So, playbook, but obviously some people can't go on that. Some people can. So the next question: what about therapists and psychologists for the same question? I think the responsibility or relatability isn't up to just students in academia. Obviously, I mean, everyone is in some sort of formal need to kind of evaluate themselves. Do committees say differently? Well, you say one thing versus the other. Does somebody in the adult entertainment industry have to release their timeline or findings? No. Does someone in matchmaking have to do this? They might have to do something like that with pressure coming along, but the relationship between many things, rape, assault, murders. They're just some of the most heinous of the heinous things, and a lot of the connectivity again doesn't really go together like a normal person should. But you're looking at a whole idea surrounding this. I mean, you're looking at even the U.S. courts. If it was a programmer who was working on the U.S. courts, should they release a timeline of when things are going to go out? Let's say their business is in Japan and they work on all the U.S. government systems or something like that. Would that make sense? Well, maybe look it up. So, I mean, if it was AI, generating this message saying like, oh, hey, look it up. I'm going to quote this guy in the quote. And says like, hey, not all Japanese systems are making the U.S. government computer for the U.S. courts. Well, why don't you look it up, AI, and find what company that is and why jury duty is being solved by the Japanese courts. So there's and a no to the question. The Privacy and Sensitivity Security Act, National Security Act, is a really umbrella of that question of should they have a timeline of when they're going to release the evidence or when they're going to do something about it. I mean, isn't that what the president or Congress is for? And you might say sign off WTF or laugh at the person, but in relationships you might want to ask yourself why. Are all these people supposed to get together and say, when are we going to solve this? They would think, when are we going to solve that question? I didn't hire you. I don't pay you for that. No, you're going to go solve this. And you're kind of like, you're going to solve it. But in the end, do they solve it? Maybe move by that one. Should the congressman or senator solve it? Solve the crisis of what, though? I mean, of timelines. When are you going to have a timeline available, Congresswoman AOC? When are you going to have a timeline? Ex AOC. When are you going to have a timeline about that? So, How ironic. So let's go to the next question. Remember those questions. Should the community be more informed? Absolutely, the community should be more informed. Why wouldn't they be more informed about public atrocities? If a public atrocity was made up, would they want to be informed? I think so. If the reality, but the reality also, now that you think about it, no caseworker is going to go publish because it's just money we don't have. I mean, there's no money in it. But what about the constant reminder of students, online saying, "Oh, there's going to be another attack overseas"? Well, think about that. Why would you invest a bunch of money in the CIA when all this is going on? I don't know. Probably the money here starts first and then branches out. But the relationship there is a bigger question because it's not there. It's a quote saying, "Oh, we'll do it," but there's nothing there. Even this video before it got like 10 views. So, relationship wise, it should be concerning data. It should be your constitutional rights, your voting power, all of the above, to not segregate data based on normal ideas about mass shootings or victims. Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure the relationship there is so serious that not an argument shouldn't take place, but one of those ideas about anti should happen. In the real world, when the Nazis attacked, Germany or the Germans, or the Austrian Republic, or all the other places, they went to war and they started killing people. So why wouldn't it be that level when a mass attack has happened on every street level or area in the world? I mean, but you're looking at low-level offenders to high-level offenders when you're looking at the stake of policy from high to low. But the in or the reality is, I mean, people have the idea of frustration. Right? There might be the metal cap. It might be the mercury cap. It might be who ate food last. I mean, yeah, that's one thing. But then all food is somewhat good if not all pain is pain. And all pain is worse, right? Yeah, I'm sure the mercury will start to dissolve your muscles over 2 or 3 months' time, even though they're different now. But the quality of your stress levels, your everything really has changed, right? And you might find the funny doctor who kind of repetitively makes mistakes and says, "Hey, no, don't listen to them. I'm the good guy and I'm making the right choices for you. So you don't have to mess around with this." So think, where have we heard these ideas before? A pill dealer? A slasher? A murderer? And there's many, many words for people who come up with false, fake, weird, strange ideas, right? And I mean, not all of them. I mean, some of the ideas are all right. I mean, some metal fillings have always fallen out of mouth. And it is always angry and is always depreciated for life. But in what short term and what long term? No, I mean, you'd have to look at organs. You'd have to look at eyesight. You like to have the receptive response. But then when these things merge together, the identity is all you have. Maybe they just don't know math very well. I mean, it's a very uninformed math structure. Maybe true love, wasn't met the way it was. I mean, some sort of hypothetical situation, if everyone was somewhat related on some sort of even plane, certainly, there was some sort of matchmaking happening. Someone's related to someone, and then down the line, it kind of morphs into this thing of kind of like, you can't do that because it's my third cousin. No, you can't do that because it's my first cousin. I mean, in law, it says, you might not marry your fourth cousin, right? So, or you may in certain places. But the question, again, it's like kind of like you're self-revolving. And then when you go into the self-revolving door, you're kind of like looking at money. Receptive thinking, academia. You're looking at a creator, right? But you also might be looking at the person holding the keys, right? So it's another question behind the question. Without that, you might think, what is the nature of that? I mean, you might look at nature of data. You might look at the nature of cryptocurrency. I don't know. Relationship between what and what, and why is there a relationship if there's no relationship at all? Should things be more honest and purposeful in life? Who knows? So let's ask more questions. Who is their boss? Who gets training with low budgets? What kind of boss would allow it? An owner of a business would allow it. The reciprocal of the voters, a share of the business would allow it. the voters. Like it could even be a stock arrangement. You vote online. I see a lot of kid gym or kid pools starting up at gyms. Maybe they're really voting for the power here. I mean, there's like a rich and low gap. There we go. But the reality of who is their boss? Is it the boss really the HR department? I mean, does it really work that way? Can you be an HR boss and make these decisions? You shouldn't. You should be fired. And again and again and again. And what holds the business accountable? And that's business today. Nothing really holds you accountable. So you're kind of like you're screwed on that one. But the reality there is, well, it's kind of like who gets to you know what is it called, like who gets to hammer someone else's grave in almost. It's kind of like so low budget. You get sad. Maybe your family has cancer. Maybe I'm in that situation. Maybe the family member finds a relationship between their family members dying from cancer, and then they get so angry at somebody they go and kill them. I mean, it's a possibility. Besides the idea of losing a filling, a cap in the mouth, or finding a daunting fact about the filling. I mean, maybe anger works in different ways. Bone works like bone, though, right? I mean, bone is bone. If teeth aren't bone, then what are they? According to the science I see today, they don't really regrow except now, apparently. So, you look at the textbook, 50 years ago, you might say, yeah. You might say 30 years ago, yeah, we found it again. But, in relationship to like what you can see online now, what you can look at now, so what? Who gets the training with low budgets, though? I mean, should the kid be able to go from another place to another place, swing funding, or should who gets the training? Should the training be by the person doing the work? Like if it was me, I wanted to be a paralegal. Do you get the funding that's low capital funding? I mean, we're at a stage here saying, yeah, no, but I mean, we got the workforce Pell Grant. Otherwise, if a school is about to offer funding for that and be class credit wise, I mean, it would be $10,000 straight up. Do you have $10,000 laying around to do that? I mean, everyone really does. So you got to think about, it's not just bitter. It's an evil truth. You're finding a way to spend money to stay informed. It's not usually the greatest, but that's what you got usually. So that's another impeding fact or thought, right? So if you don't have what you need, there is just death basically. Who gets the funding now? I mean, if you didn't save your money up, you got to think about your question. If you didn't save your money up to make money, to do money, and I'm not saying everyone, but like think about it, like it's compromise. If all the workers got together and they did do their job in a hypothetical situation, they evened out, or they weren't able to make the funding or something, or in fact, the training became more domicile than anything. You know what I mean? Like in a worse scenario, just like the movies, if you don't have the money, you get paid a commission, just like the movies, just like in World War II, just like in World War One, you get a commission, and then you get training for that. It doesn't mean they got training to go to school. They got training. Now we have training, but then we're going to spend all the money over and over and over again. But you got to think about, did all that happen? Did all that money get spent for the same exact reasons it got informed for? And then why would it not get spent for the same exact correct reasons? There you go. So, one budget is like a plot on the graph, the X, right? And then the Y obviously is zero, but it's a floating point. You're finding a pool in it. You don't really understand or claim the understanding behind the pool, but you also find a reaction there. And variables in your mind aren't just to react, but on a outlook of, let's say, X is 1 and Y is 0, X is 1, Y is 0. So you're looking at almost like a timeline, but in the functionality, did the Y-axis ever catch on? Or would certain businesses use that? So kind of have to look at it that way, like the function of it, right? It's kind of like gamma radiation with alpha radiation or delta, right? So I mean, which is delta is small, but at the relationship of what, though? I mean, decay wise of what though? What is a relationship that is real in that situation? What is not? Right? You already believe in like numbers, ideas I don't use, believe in, but the relationship between all the things you see and do and feel are just like those numbers. I mean, like you look around and say like there's a mass immigration policy, and sort of right, and they might speak different languages. And you didn't, say that. I mean, news might quote, military age male, or they might say, "Hey, you didn't pay your taxpayer. You can't just come in like that, or you got to do right." I mean, you can't just work with my food and do certain things. You can't just deliver my food either. Like, yeah, and like, yeah, but land is money. Money is land, and you got to hire people to do these thoughts. You got to either put that together or put like some sort of commission or a GoFundMe. Maybe not a GoFundMe, but a GoFundMe for the stage of the business. So you got to find a viable way to do something you should do, right? It could just be cloaked like that. Can't be, unnecessary to, just help. You can't just say, hey, come in here and do this. It doesn't just work that. You got to find a way to do it. I mean, that 5-10 minutes of time, that $5 you have, I mean, maybe it already goes to something like that. The strategy, the business, the policy, that's $5 right there. I mean, you might think it's not critical, but what if it's already turned? It's turned a leaf, and it's going to say, "Oh, we're only helping adopted kids out. We couldn't reach the funding out, right?" Obviously, the policy shouldn't work that way, but then when you study the business, it works a lot better. You make a lot more money in adoption care than you make somewhere else, and that's the actual work years. And I'm saying when you're looking at adoption care versus something else, you're making a lot more money. You're helping a lot more people when you adopt these kids. So, when you look at somebody taking money, taking stake, and then running up a business that's already doing business within the international market, that's not going to look good, especially when you're going to say, "Oh, I didn't do these. I didn't meet these demands." But we're looking at taxes. We're looking at taxpayer money you have to spend for the police. You have to find a whole different housing is another thing. Information from from education itself. Oh, absolutely. And then with adoption care, you're looking at a lot of employers, corporate heads that are willing to train people who are adopted. Straight up, because it has never been caustic, which is meaning the vote has never been adequate. It's never been not finding, but it's never been accurate, right? Or you're looking at quite a few different things that are not accurate. And I'm not saying like you're a wheelchair and you shouldn't be able to vote. No, you actually should be able to vote 100%. You should not be declared some sort of spin-off. You have to not mail in your ballot. But when you look at the numbers, you look at the virality or the necessary steps of safety, see everything that keeps on a low bang. I mean, if you think of a question like this, and then you think about a question, the big thing, there's some serious, overtone or notes there that are just not trending right, looking right. The view counts aren't right. A lot of things just look inaccurate, really. A video like this with 10 views, video with nothing. They love energy. They love the nuclear. I mean, it doesn't cost money to learn how to vote, right? It's a compassionate sport, right? Not killing. So let's go to the next question. Should people on budget from other states be with limited income be able to swing funding for the benefit, education, SNAP, etc., without what about a mass shooting victim? Should they be able to do that? I'd say there's no laws against. That's why we have laws. But when you take one resource from the other, should there be laws? I think that's what I would say, unless you're looking at the divisibility of the economy. Are you trying to take resources from the economy? That happens all the time. And I think this is one of the loops that people go through. It's kind of like can you tax outcome, or can you tax or retax somebody? And there's a relationship right there. I think that shares a relationship, but then you also look at the turning wheel of money. I mean, in the future, if you make money now, you're going to get less financial aid. Then I'm not sure how what the fast one now is going to work, but when you take a relationship, that's even, and then it doesn't have quality of data, as we're talking about. It doesn't share certain things, but we don't have a developed quality network either. We have a quality of support, right? Quality of concern, quality of reference, right? So when you look at that, you kind of think about the revolution, word revolution, or resolution, right? So I mean, the big R's, which are they're the retournement, they're like kind of the AI development words. If you have the nine of spades, it's the nine of aces, right? The relationship there is just kind of easy. It's imprinted in your mind. Its resolution is, or revelation, is about the instigation of time, right? You're looking at PWs, you're looking at slavery, you're looking at war. Resolution, kind of a made up word. I would say better word would be, of course, reservation of like quantity. Quantity itself would be more happenstantial because it's a dynamic. I don't think we use result anymore as a word, or priority. I don't think a lot of people use the word priority either. Prior. They use the word prior. They don't use the word priority as it's quicken, and then listed. So if suspicion, let's go to the next question. If suspicion arises, who do you report to? Crime Stoppers? I mean, that's a great question. Would you give a quick call to the United States president? What about the VP of the country? Or what about the Department of War or FBI? This is 440, same as audio recording. So who would you give a call to? The NC Mac? I found good habit at going to a forum online, the best of habits, and then reporting it that way. Reporting, recording, and then relating. So, I mean, I take a lot of work to kind of discourse the information, kind of pulling it together, but saying like one and one, yeah. You'll be the first one to go in and say, hey, let's ask a question. I was in a blank, but then this happened and they ignored this information. They wouldn't remove my Facebook profile, or they wouldn't release my privacy concern, or they wouldn't stop harassing me. So I mean, you don't have to necessarily top it on, but the forum would need to necessarily know. But then when you go back to the forum, obviously you're looking at who owns the forum, what kind of money do they want, what kind of money do they make? It could be funny money, right? So yeah, you will say absolutely funny money is attached to forums, right? So I mean, look at Reddit. Creator's dead, obviously. He was one of the outspoken people who didn't like funny money in certain ways. But you look at a forum for like the military, or you look at a forum for maybe self-defense insurance. There's questionability involved there. Maybe the relationship with the business, but you're looking at a whole different network saying, oh, well, this person sold me this, did that, and did this and that. But you look at something like True Blue with Chris Hansen. You're looking at take up like, okay, well, how did I not know this information? I didn't know the dollar store down the street was selling, kids' toys that are adult themed. I mean, you got to put it somewhere. If the Crime Stoppers not listening, then why wouldn't they listen? Why wouldn't this be documented? Why wouldn't it be timelined? And say, oh yeah, absolutely, the forum is the best choice. But what after the forum? What if they try to go after you? Go after you, and you're like kind of like, yeah, they're not trying to steal my watch. They're trying to shoot me. Kind of like it's not so much paranoid because you're like not having an episode. You're kind of referring to mass shooting 1, mass shooting 2, mass shooting 3, and the list goes on. And say you're an FBI agent who was fired, or a disgruntled soldier, right? How many shootings could you have? How many immigrants could you have that are related towards, excess of, maybe government measuring land, doing some sort of thing on the land, right? Leasing it or something. But, relationship it should stay even. We shouldn't just have strange facts and ideas and orders in. But when somebody comes up to you and says, let's scrap those plans. You did a bad job and your ideas are crazy. It sounds like you're hearing voices. I mean, you can say to anything, but you have to ask the cop, are you on drugs? Can I get your badge? I mean, who would you call? That's a very good question. I don't think it really has a solution at this point. I mean, go on LinkedIn, you can go and ask like 50 of the top executives for an answer to that question. I don't think they'd be able to answer you either. And the relationship would be very strong, sturdy, and then relative towards certain success. Maybe needs and hows, emergency management, and I mean the system, the people, all in it. And then when you go relatively down the list, you kind of say like, what abilities are the top, 500 in that I don't have, and you say, oh, that's kind of like the top 500, 400 in the FBI. they engage with all these networks, the top and then Delta and SEAL Team, they all engage with these networks. But when you look at the reality of looking at the lower span, there's no weed, there's no drugs. But the reality behind that is, why can't certain people do a certain thing? Why is this person post-traumatic stress issues, when their doctor they're not agreeing or something like that, or why do they do talk therapy, right? The leg been blown off or something, but when reality doesn't click in, what clicks in? You might think about the metal fillings in your mouth. Is that the reality you share with the world? You were slower now that you have mercury in you. Maybe. It's better than drawing a comic, and I drew one the other day about pots and pans, and I came up with a fictitious character where the AI did, and I said it was Deadpan. And he was basically cooking up deadpan jokes or cooking up deadpan food. And it was basically killing people. It was a poison. But the relationship in human life is different. It's kind of like if you said the mass murderer was the wolf in town, or like the dog, and kept on killing kids and people. Do you feed them cake? Do you not feed them cake? What? What is the relationship? Why don't we need it? And why can't we have it now? Right? So it is what it is. Who would you report it to, though? If the president can't do it, would you quote him on Twitter and say, hey, him, and then here's the senator and say, oh, hey, we found this, but the reality there isn't really it's not going together quite well. Yeah, and that's been documented, but what do you do with that document now? Are you going to get threatened? We see the document, or what about hey, this terrorist entered the country. And they didn't do anything about it, and he went and killed a bunch of people. What then? What do you do then? Or what about you're in hot, you've done something so bad, you give them a code word that's secure or private, and you're like, oh no, not now. But then they're like, oh, I got the killer the other day, and he was actually that guy's first grade teacher's husband. Or oh no, he knew him before he was even doing this, so he knows him. I don't know. You go make a pitch like anything. Go make a pitch you're on YouTube and saying hey, this is American pasta. There isn't one for this. You just have to kind of wing it. That's what I would do in this situation. I just wing it. If I was an FBI agent and I had a full badge and documents, said, hey, I just went you're doing this for you, but the reality there is you'd probably get taken away and play a couple minutes, but why? And say why? Why? Why can't anybody do anything? Why can't be the terrorist be a school teacher the whole time? Ask stupid questions, as they put it, or say fuck around and find out. I think that's how it's done. Ask stupid questions, get stupid answers, pretty much. So the next question here. And if you really suspect, someone just reported to the FBI. The FBI is always a fine solution. NCMAC, always fine. Don't hurt kids, don't hurt people. But, always second question, if somebody is actually, collecting their information online, be kind of suspicious. These warnings about the military saying, oh, don't use the dang website, or no, or else, or, just be suspicious. Be a little bit more suspicious than that. Okay. All right. Let's see. What if the director agent is in hot water, bribes, scandals, crime, corruption, theft, cover up, falsified records? Like the person who didn't die, and they collected the money or something. I didn't remember to put that one in there. Well, yeah, probably think about it like that. The FBI director right now is in prison or jail or something, I think. I'll have to look it up, but when you think about, how much money or time you can spend to ignore a certain question or a certainty, do you think that's a joke? Do you think you should exaggerate? Do you think you should do a lot of things that you shouldn't do? Does it rhyme with the word? Hot water, pot water, cot water, salt water, pop water? The thing keeps on going around and around of maybe this guy's a murderer and he's done something bad at the job, or maybe he's done something very bad. I'm not one to make decisions for somebody else, but I think that goes into our system, thinking as well, like voting or something else. If the reality is about finding a mind frame to do something supportive, maybe, but finding a way to, in principle, make sure these ideas are not more corrupted. Right, that's one thing. Well, it sounds like the party's about to start nearby, and the party, obviously. But let's keep on going. Records lost for mass shooting victims' work history. If the work history is lost, it sounds like you have a scandal on your hands. I mean, is anywhere else would go? You have a scandal on your hands. Can it just be figured out? It just depends on the business. Usually, I think most honest people think honest thoughts. If you're looking at it empathy kind of or psychological way, figuratively, if you were lost in mind, you shouldn't have problems like that in normal life, right? I think that's a bigger answer. If you don't have a lot of money, I mean, it's is, or the right is the right, right? A person is a person, right? But not always on paper, but maybe something more. Computation is computation, logic is logic, right? So logic is a story, computation is the math behind it, right? Or basically the money, I guess. Always count the money, no matter what. If the money isn't connected to money, it isn't real. I think that's the more important, concept there, or reality. I don't think you're gonna find another one except get off the bad idea, get off the bad thought. Usually, unless that person is real bitter. I think that's a business owner who's real bitter, but I don't know. Let's see. More than one dead. What about going AWOL or unit silence? What command should pick up and how can it be resolved? I mean, I think you're thinking about JTAC, JSOC, or like something like Delta. It's not like it's censored, it's just real, basically. Like the FBI uh, crime unit, the top 400, right? It's just the units that work on the top. Um, but when you go and someone dies, like say in your unit, or they go AWOL, well, like the whole unit dies, or like they're AWOL in the unit and they die, and they go AWOL. Um, are you thinking about undercovers or something like that, or remiance of cooperating witnesses? I mean, there is an attachment there that you might find in normal life. Why would you answer it like that? It's a very good question. It's a question that is stood the time of many years. I mean, if you could find the video, I mean, obviously, I don't see why one person would want to see the video, but the reality is human choice and activity. If you called them up enough of times, they would probably come, but why would they not come running? And there you go with an answer question. Find no solution. You can't have any solution at all except a dental office, right? If I removed all my fillings, would I be very cute as a guy? I mean, the reality there's no relationship that will not solve a question that is stupid, I guess, dumb, I guess. But when you use the more fragile words, more fragile outcomes come. So I mean, you just got to think about it. Don't find a reason to talk to your son or daughter, or whoever, to like see like into the eyes of someone else. But I mean, you find a reason to talk to them. Find a reason to find support. If something can't be resolved, it should be resolved, right? But it's not about being apparently a good person. It's about finding an identity, about sport, maybe law, order, sociology, needs. Not really a concept or a privilege, but it's still a support system nevertheless. But if you're going AWOL in those things, maybe it's the best way to report to them, the best way. But if you have that staffer in the way that's always saying, "Oh no, I'm in a loophole and I did my thing or did my job," so just kind of think like, yeah, you probably don't have male feelings from. Oh, I mean, you probably don't know what you're talking about. Then, if your idea was about the identity of the situation, it probably is not that, because it's a setup, basically. A debriefing is a setup, basically, as the axis is the chart. Setup is an axis itself, right? So there's that, but then the char or chai is residual. It's the way to get out. It's the self-talk button, right? But what you do know is you don't take what self-talk talk because it's a insidiation, right? That's a hard one. Like you're using the wrong chart, but you're using a privilege versus approximation market versus reality. We don't deprive certain prisoners of rights, but the reality is when things become more appropriate, they should become more appropriate for the world. So there's a talk back, a talk crisscross. I mean, people talk back, but I mean, that's a reality. That's a changer in the system. That's kind of like what you've been sentenced to. I guess, I mean, if there was more of a way to give someone a better sentence, but, on the opposite end, you're just kind of like in a brig, right? I mean, that's how it goes. So the next question, what about the manpower and clocked in hours? It's a great question. If you put in 400,000 hours, don't get paid for something so silly, would you be insane? The thing is, would you not be insane? I mean, you're a volunteer basically without a record or an account to do something, or you're finding a way to find a central identity behind a purpose. Is it illegal? Not really. It's like asking the MEC, is it illegal to collect small amounts of information to give the FBI to sue children? Of course, they'll say, yeah, absolutely, you can do that. Or to a doctor that always says no and is disobedient and likes killing things, like Dr. Death. It's like, oh no, no, thank you. We don't want to. We don't have enough thoughts and evidence about you, but we do really think you're a bad guy, and everything you do, even though you keep it private and you're weird, we'll get you. The more weird you think, thoughts, we think we need to censor your person for life, basically. That kind of talk, and kind of like, yeah, I'm done manipulating the bad ideas to get better improvements in my life. I mean, at what risk level, at what level at all? I mean, you can ask yourself, but say like, hey, you really haven't turned a leaf because your ideas don't make sense in a normal way, or in a normal way. Yeah, we don't really mess around with thoughts about thoughts. You were thinking thoughts about things, but they weren't real. Yeah, I don't think privacy data that important or conclusive, right? So, though it should scare about anyone, and the way you're bending absolutism or time. That's crazy. On ideas that are not real, just because they're examples, they're not real. You jab a kid with toxic fentanyl or something, and you expect him to live through this experiment, and then you revive him. You're gonna prison probably. Yeah, or something else along those lines. It's kind of strange. You're like striking people, some sort of absurd socialist, what is it called, Confederate kind of way, So the question is, about psychology itself. Is this person vindictive or unrelatable? Are they having some sort of humor episode at work? I don't know. Bad time to have humor episode, I guess. So you just kind of have to think about it like a human being. Just wait it off. Think about it. I mean, the information comes in. It's important. The power comes in. It's also important. It's relatable, right? So, go to the next one here. That's manpower and clocked in hours. But absolutely, stay organized is another one any person would say. Stay organized to do what you need to do because it's important. Because otherwise, you're not going to make too much sense when you get older. Sound like you have Alzheimer's or dementia. You're going to sound like you have some sort of evil vendetta against people, and like you were in control for a little while, and now you're not. Or something else along the lines of hey, this guy's eyes weren't pupillated or dilated, they were just they were awake. That's the one we're thinking about. They're awake. So let's go to the next one. If someone keeps on doing their job wrong and saying no to everyone they talk to, should they be excused of this issue? What if they keep on working overtime with too many mistakes? I mean, I think we hear that one a lot. Is it true or not? I mean, you'd have to go over the whole list of like an HR representative would do and say, hey, were you supposed to be looking at this data today? Or like, were you supposed to deliver water that day? Were you supposed to actually ask for a tip that day? I'm paying you full paycheck. Are you supposed to be doing that? And you're like, working full-time overtime and you're from another country? I mean, back in the day, these laws were very rationalized. They were all like, ideas together. There was an actual law about it. Broke the law. it was like the Patriot Act, as they would veto it in different places. They said, "Oh no, if you're an immigrant, you may not work as a truck. I mean, you may not work as a delivery driver. A few things, very few things." But the plot of the law was changed a little bit. Maybe like Puerto Rico, maybe like Hawaii, things like that. They needed certain people to drive cars because of the toxicity or lack of resources. That's one thing, or during a hurricane or tornado, it's another thing. And I think there was some support from people in Florida, like big support by Republicans. But the relationship there, it was pretty steady for a while, as not obstructive, but as a way to kind of help people with work rather than let them work. There's nothing wrong with it. I would say helping people with work is a lot stronger suited for most people because you're finding a relationship between your citizenship or trying to do something for work. Whereas fast is not work. Fast shopping, fast grocery shopping, it's all new. It's not work. It's a way to find wealth, health, the bigger ones, but finding a way to clock out for clockwork's sake, right? That means you're in control through controlling matters, right? Now you're not the clocked one in. You're finding the point to the clock, right? When you clock in, it's important. You might feel demeated, but I mean, when you clock in nowadays, everything is dirty. Everything is, socialist in a way. That's a broad way of putting it. But then, everything is also, fragile. If you don't go to work, shame on you if you miss your overtime. I doubt it because I mean, there's certain works still say, oh, you can work 4 or 5 hours a day, and there's nothing wrong with that. Again, $1,000 is very rational. 1,500. I mean, it's very rational with that amount, but at the cost, it's data, it's rent, it's a capital market that is just ever changing. The quality of the paycheck is changing as well. In principle, the hours are not the same meaning as the principal hours, but again, that has to do with maybe the quality of the management, what they're supposed to be doing, what they're saying, or perhaps the relationship between maybe the quality of work, but also, a few things, which are the relationship between working and then the hour count or something like that. So it is, it's a fragile one at that. The working overclocked hours every day is not going to be extensively good for the company or you. And especially for somebody who is in the situation, or if it was leading up to the situation or out of the situation, these things will just get within and without priority. I mean, within priority is tangible. I mean, you're getting ready for a second job as someone in the workforce with your life. Your life is your job. The job spectrum is so great right now. You can get a job picking up trash off the ground, and that's a job now. I mean, you got to think about the collected data, how it's collected, why it's collected, relationship between the data. It doesn't just work as saying no, obviously, but relationship there, you'd have to find a reason why to. Not really. We're looking at the fixed proposition. Somebody makes a little bit of money, they go into debt, they do silly things, right? So I mean, same as fine pitching or tuning. The word no means a whole different thing. I mean, there's a kid and someone says no to you. It'd be awful, but you might learn to adapt. But the reality, some people don't learn that adaptation. They find, the word no is a skill to kind of institute. That's just kind of their relationship with the world, and that might change over time. It might be related towards the heat of the moment. It might be related towards something else. But the relationship there, I mean, it can change. It can be a game changer, and it doesn't always mean you can't say it right. But you got to see a thread that you got to be willing to find a way to not be shaken up, but find a way to start not counting your time, right? But find a way to break even during the day. You're breaking even with your emotion too. Doesn't mean you're fired. It means that when you find a relationship between this and that, I mean, you're satisfying, right? If everybody does overtime all the time, it wouldn't really make sense. You're doing overtime for no reason, right? If you're overworking yourself to do overtime, I mean, maybe, but then when you look at the social security system, you can only put so many tax credits in. I mean, when you look at, immigration can the amount of hours, right? I think it's like 5 years of work or something like that. How many hours? Do you need to apply for citizenship in the USA? How many hours of work? I think either it's changed or it's just different now. There is no work hour requirement to apply for the United States. Instead of job hours, eligibility is based on having a green card, lawful permanent resident status for 5 years, or 3 years if married to a U.S. citizen, along with meeting physical presence and good moral character rules. 5 years as a green card holder, or 3 years married to a U.S. citizen. Physical presence 30 months since the U.S. And inside the U.S. out of the 5 years or 18 out of the 5 years or 18 months out of the 3 years for the spouses. Okay, so I mean, not really a whole lot of time, but the relationship. Okay, does that apply for SSA or food stamps or welfare once in the country? Let's see. Look it up. From what I'm aware, it's like 5 years or something. Applying for SSA, food stamps, or welfare depends entirely on your immigration status, and doing so can heavily impact your path to a green card. As a general rule, undocumented immigrants are barred from most federal benefits, while lawful immigrants must usually wait 5 years to qualify. Crucially, a major policy shift takes effect on September 18th, 2026, making the use of non-cash benefits a serious risk for certain applications. So I guess it does not say the amount of relationship, but it doesn't say before 2026, September 18th, only cash assistance like SSI or TANF, welfare and long-term nursing home care count against food stamps and standard Medicaid are safe to use. On or after, under a new U.S. CIS public charge regulation, immigration officers have broad discretion to deny green cards if you use any means tested benefits, including food stamps, SNAP, non-emergency Medicaid, and Section 8 housing vouchers. So that's a bigger thing there, as it is quite swamped right now, I suppose. Let's see. That also includes is married and have lived in the USA for 5 years, or nationals. Let's see. U.S. citizens are completely exempt from public charge rules, but green card holders, married to citizens, and long-term residents are still affected depending on the benefit. I think that means U.S. citizen nationals, immigration risk 0. The public charge or charge rule never applies to U.S. citizens or nationals. Okay. Benefit eligibility: citizens can apply for and receive SNAP, food stamps, TANF, welfare, SSA benefits at any time without any waiting periods or risk to their status, provided they meet income guidelines. Green cards holders, even married to a citizen or living in the U.S. for 5 years. Being married to a U.S. citizen or living in the country for 5 years changes program eligibility, but it does not automatically shield a green card holder from immigration scrutiny if they intend to adjust their status or sponsor family members. Under federal law, green card holders must wait 5 years before they are legally eligible to receive federal means tested before, like SNAP, food stamps, or TANF welfare. Living here for 5 years means they have finally bypassed this waiting period and can legally apply. Marriage to a citizen, this does not bypass the 5-year waiting period for food stamps or welfare. 40-quarter rule for SSA, full retirement or disability, prevents a green card holder in its 10 years of work, 40 quarters, like anyone else. However, if they're married, they can sometimes count their work credits earned by the spouse to qualify as a say just like a normal person. Okay, so I mean, it just kind of changed the criteria, I suppose. Probably, I'm not sure the specifics of the criteria, but probably learn about it. They have that same kind of policy going forward right now for school education, workforce. So kind of serious in a way. And I'm sure there'll be reasons, maybe more data looking forward, or maybe the reasons will be more selective about, maybe safety, maybe about something more important, like, once we're talking about organization. But it is a serious note, tone. It should, economically stay stable if a business is working forward, which, there are a few businesses and they're quite wealthy in some places. There was an instance of a Chinese company trying to buy out a top pig company. So that's something you don't see every day. Probably will get some huge opposition, but you just have to see it more of an ordinary way for, the sake of the country. Certain things I would think. So that kind of goes into clockwork. Kind of goes into the why, if Ken said no, what would happen if you made too many mistakes, and kind of looking at the liability there. You got a lot of things, returns. You're looking at, should they be excused for the issue? Why or why not? Not that big or inviolable, but you're looking at your private data. I think things like that. Looking at, why would there be too many mistakes to begin with? Why was this person being disheveled? Why was the system looking at doing things incorrectly, right? All right, so let's go to the next one. Should the corporate aspect be weak, strong against these matters? Should the workplace be cleaner? Should there be better background checks? Oh, I think, yeah, for a lot of them. But I think for a lot of those questions also, you're looking at money. You're looking at how much money would cost and the system requirements. So if you're looking at data systems to go look at data, it's going to cost money for a company. I mean, you're looking at a lot of data. You're looking at buying contracts, and a lot of these businesses have been working on a contingency of 0 to 1. I mean, they're losing so many profits right now. It's insane. I mean, they're contingent on giving certain prices, but at the idea of like, are you eating moldy bread? Are you like, looking at, food that's like made from Coca-Cola? I mean, I'm saying you couldn't hypothetically, ban cocaine from Coca-Cola, but the reality there is like, why would you like concern yourself with the matter of like, feeding a child if like you've been doing cocaine, right? I mean, so the same like principle goes into play. You might say, no, we've heard this story, but no, we know this story. Cocaine is in Coca-Cola. Cocaine leaves in Coca-Cola means it's a drug. Yeah. It means it's a high drug. It means people are in a high class of addict more than any time in the world with this amount of technology. Yeah. But yeah, no, they're cocaine and Coca-Cola. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, you're looking at, is it a weak part of the, company to become like, numb with the cocaine, or like, is it strong? Or is it like, the obstacle point of like, thinking of like a child is like, I had it all. I had all the ways to numb my teeth today. Went out a little bit of that. You got to think about like, the way you should, right? Safe eating, safe, clean eating, thoughts that don't hurt people, reality that is normal. Yeah. Not a tinge of like, questioning what they consider dynamic of metaphor or an analogy, the silver bullet, right? I mean, most people don't go on sprees with silver bullet. That's insane, right? You going after a werewolf, or, in the American story, you call it the silver bullet. And then a Kuchulawa, if you're using that to go find a creature, and you're in biology 101 or 1 from, freshman year in high school, probably wouldn't go find all those things. These are abnormal thoughts, right? They're abnormal. They don't mean necessarily they're bad guy, but I mean, you got to think about like, why would you come up with these ideas? Why would you put them together in the first place? I mean, these ideas come from somewhere or another, right? Same for copper. That isn't even normal, but and back in the day, you'd think like you would be like the worst of the worst. But nowadays, I mean, you finding a way to assassinate people is a normal thing. I mean, the more normal, the more staged it becomes, the more effective it becomes in a range or thinking skill, right? If no one does anything to unsettle the ground in which you're staying in, that is quite unvisited, as someone like Walt Whitman would say, right? If you're finding a way to unsettle the mind itself, you're finding a way to do something. Sigmund Freud, Albert Einstein would say, so the relationship, it's there. I mean, if you have a corporate aspect weak, strong against these matters, like this matters, like, it's like a red flag printed with like pink, right? Or like, a blue flag printed with purple. There are corporate aspects by weakness, strongness, but the hands-on is the business technique, right? It's the quality of data, it's the support of law, it's the aspect of corporate, right? You're exchanging one thing for the other, but the living exhaustion, the support. I mean, it will become much and much over time that you won't be able to handle yourself. And you quoting yourself, on a CEO, VP level. I mean, sure, there's 30 VPs, but the relationship there. You know what you're talking about, right? I mean, question: should the workforce be cleaner? I mean, would that be going into the DIY part, the quick fix part, right? Should it be cleaner or should it just be part of the scheduled maintenance? I mean, yeah, it should be about all of that, but it should be about like the best sanitary needs. I mean, if it's to replace the tiles, sort of. I mean, if your store is gross and the employee is like getting sick from like exposure to like Hep B or like something worse, yeah. But like if you're like dental, work for the business, does the same thing, yeah. If the school did the same thing, I would say, yeah. If the schools, kids, they got insurance from the state, would they do that? I mean, yeah, I would say the school needs to be clean. All these things need to be clean. It's like one of the hygiene words is like psychological clean is a good clean, right? So, I mean, just saying, you did it and it's going to get better now doesn't mean necessarily it does unless it's real, right? Strengthen these ideas, these bones, these whatever you're trying to build on. The serious impact. One person going out, and I'm sure there's a lot more social revelation. But I mean, we had MySpace before that. Before there was town halls. There was get-togethers at the meeting, the camps, things like that. I mean, there's plenty of ways to get together. Camps have been around there for ages, right? Going outings, like little puppet theaters, way to give cards out is one of those things. Reenactments, going to the post office, a phone book. I mean, there's plenty of things. Things have just gotten bigger, easier, and the population has grown significantly. So it's a serious thing. Should there be better background checks there? I mean, the town sheriff might have done background checks back in the day. I mean, it makes you question a big thing, the church do this? I mean, does the church really do that, or we've been brainwashed to believe? That's another question about that. I mean, have we been brainwashed? Brainwashed to believe in what? Exactly. So I think we about answered all of that. Background checks, yeah, but then we haven't really asked the question: taking out the opponent before you take the opponent out, conflict wise or non-conflict wise. I mean, would you de-escalate the conflict there? And that's a good question. I mean, would you do that? I mean, as a less of an embarrassment or less of an unreality? I mean, this is all data in a way. I mean, taking out an opponent before it takes you out. I mean, yeah. If you hear the voice and it says they're going to do it, I mean, why would you repeat yourself mistake? I mean, even if I were to say it for a moment in time on this like 3-hour video, I mean, it would just be absurd, right? Saying somebody can go and collect the data, churn it off, and then go kill kids, or like have the thrust to kill and segregate and be prejudiced. If you're a hacker, yeah, you probably think about it like that needs to stop right away, as it's so obscure. It's like it's a deadly voice, a deadly thought. It's deadly in general, basically. So what's the next question here? What about managers reviewing themselves? Yeah, I mean, in the case of like this, manager sounds like reviewing themselves all the time. They say, "Oh, checklist, check box. I'm the head of the company. Is there a contingency for the FASB or GAP to go intervene? Probably not. So when you're looking at the inner business and looking at like them already losing the cash, looking at cash in hand, or like embezzling money, or why would they be top of the office if they do such bad work? and the charges just can't get better. I don't know. They review themselves. They take money. That's side order. They get side money from the hospitals or something like that. I mean, would you know what you're talking about if you said like things that were murderous or like the rival gangs or like your ideas were about putting poison in somebody's mouth from like this idea that's subjective from like 570 age to like when the Nazis were ruling or something? I mean, or the Allied empires were like fighting in like a devious war and there was like 18 million dead, and then add like another 100 million to that in the next few years. I would say like, yeah, your outstanding ideas are like bad, just as like your repertoire for like your understanding, your theme of thought, your time for acknowledging thought is unreal. It's unsettling. It's murderous. It's almost like you're a rapist, covering things up unless you're that homicidal and you're a murderer. But again, we only say these things to ourselves because you're practicing still. You have no name. I mean, there's plenty of things you could do as a manager to review yourself and kind of get out of the game, right? As they put it. Your malpractice is so bad. I mean, there's one instance of a dentist, going on a little peggy board and like going up and down, saying, "Let me work on your dental that way and this way." I mean, is it bad or is it like, let me go sedate and rape you while you're a dentist victim? I mean, like, plenty of things sound bad, right? I mean, looking at one bad idea, a lot of like, dentists that act like, bad people and do bad things. I mean, does that mean they have the idea to kill people who are mass shooting victims? What other ideas are there? Like, somebody who's getting, their organs reattached during a mass shooting. But what about the teeth? I mean, these are collectively time age, time appropriate. They don't have to happen at the same time. I mean, it could be put off for a while. The dentist is already acting strange, weird. It's been quoted in many places that the dentist could be the weirdest place imaginable, right? Or that they could be the most deadly or crime filled. I mean, imagine a girl getting braces and the doctor asking her to do something in favor. I mean, does it happen? But it's not segregated. It's not real. But at the same time, this unreal thought or notion is so real that it's disturbing. It's without example, almost, because it's so disturbing. You don't know what to do. You're turning time into matter to facts. So there's not really a good way to put it except kind of go over the evidence, kind of go over, what is the supportive need? I mean, you're looking at cleanliness, sugar, but I mean, does it have to manage it? It doesn't. It could be sugar. It could be a relationship between, something like a cleaning product, ammonia. You're looking at dental cavities. Is it looking at the material you're putting in there besides middle fillings, right? I mean, yeah. And then, as in American society, we don't really know that's plastic, or is it like polymer ceramic or something in the teeth, or like we're now discovering that you can build teeth through fluoride. Not insane. I mean, it would take like a microscopic time. It's kind of throw the fluoride off, and then your bones start to go in shock and grow those teeth. But I don't know. I mean, if it's not an oscillating crystal, like if it beats the 440, megahertz in a watch or something, or the computer, or the codex of like a file, what are you hearing though? That's the better question. If it's mercury, it's poison, right? I mean, there's not really not a poison to it. It kills cells, right? But if you're looking at, something else, like, if you got it all out, would you be like looking at like removing all your teeth to get even a shred of mercury out? Just even the mercury itself is bad. I mean, you got to think, what it means to see these things, right? So a manager reviewing themselves isn't just enough for any situation, right? I mean, once makes you want to feel like they cock their fists and go after that guy. I mean, you gotta slow it down. But I mean, the reality there is, I mean, you're looking at a whole lot of situations. I mean, the dental office, what are they known for? Also anesthetics and drugs, right? So, maybe that guy's a drug dealer or something like that. Maybe he had a bad time in some sort of other country with their language, and he's a drug dealer there or something, or he was in a mass shooting. I mean, the story doesn't always add up as much as you almost think it could. I mean, getting good at something, even though you're a bad guy, I mean, you might get a lot of bad, ideas, right? Same as like, coming with ideas that are like, saying, hey, you're insane, so therefore you're on a list and you shouldn't get, any view counts or you should be insane. Kind of gotta listen. I mean, you have control over something that is murderous. This is a ridiculous point of, someone is begging you or asking the government for a question of why have you not clarified these remedial ideas about being a mass shooter and such and such. I mean, they're all like targeted ideas. You target somebody in all of these ideas, a car, through the idea of succumbing to God. It might be a harder argument to propose. Should the courts make you forget about it? That's an easy target. Easy. Go to another country, you were in that right there. And what were the other ones? I almost can't remember how easy or hard these targets are because they're just so soft in a way. The angle is insanely soft. I mean, you're looking at hard and soft targets that are just going to follow you for whenever they don't shut down, basically, and that still isn't even enough. And we're looking at the courts making people forget, people being unofficial in the situation. That's even worse. But it's an easy way where it's unofficial, and then what was it? Unofficial and out of luck, unofficial and undocumented. I mean, you're just kind of looking at like the cast of like just swiping one book, swiping certain things. You're like, hire a hacker to do what and what reason to do it based on what reason to live. I mean, so the quality of data is one thing, but the quality of concern is higher than all of that. So high, I mean, you might want to like fudge the numbers a little bit, but I mean, at the cost of it being naturally occurring. And then the government's saying, "Hey, it's not natural. I think it's natural because we have everything taken care of." I mean, yeah and no, but the quality of data also says the manager might be able to review himself. So that's a good question altogether. It's almost like a made in center, made in America, or like made in Americas, right? So precaution is not precaution. That's precaution. That's West, right? Precaution is precaution. That is precaution. That is a test, right? Or love. But I think that's about it for today. I think the quality of data or the review of the vicinity of this question goes into a few elements here. The relationship might be, privileged, or might go into different numbers, but the relationship between what you can correspond to, what you can correspond with, what you can talk about, what you can bring with you, what you can write down, what you can hear, what you can feel. And so I think some of those are broken up a little bit too, and I think we're starting to get there too. Or there are ways to inform yourself as well. You're finding a relationship between the budgeting. You're finding a relationship between other states of finding, ways why it can break down, why this company's going to break down, why suspicion could arise. What would happen if problems started occurring there's an insurmountable amount of problems and they can come about anytime. They might just confuse numbers, right? Then there's the question of like, what had happened in the meantime, and it's not fully connected quite in the meantime of losing records, losing track of time, finding your relationship between defining, who's AWOL, who's AWOL. And I think that's segregated, non-segregated. I think it works for civilian and military as well. I think there just is an unjust amount of data I could see that's unorganized as well. So there's some sort of, surrounding between that. Hot water isn't exactly necessarily, but it does kind of fit the picture. The working relationship there is also, about the manpower, being mistaken within the identity, as managers would review themselves, or they would say no, or relationship would be too many clocked in hours. But relationship also says it would stop at any time, and it doesn't have to be addiction to work. It has to be something else, right? Because the relationship isn't addiction to work. It's about finding a way to find a solution to this problem, finding health. One of those things is information. If you find your ID card from years ago, say, hey, yeah, that made a lot more sense to me, and I found it. Or a simple file in a document. That's just as simple as it is, right? So we're also looking at different forms of documentation, right? So we're not looking at just document IDs. We're looking at documentation papers, anything really, hold information. Maybe not the civil information, but we're looking at official information. But a lot of these things do point towards information that can't be gathered, except maybe by someone in a situation that's been in this or has been in a situation that they evaluate this. But yet again, the information is so altruistic that it says, "Oh, I didn't do that, thumbs down. I didn't do that, thumbs down. I didn't do that," and the list goes on, and thumbs down until kind of it becomes a foreign thought, it becomes a foreign idea, it becomes altruistic again of I want my choice in order versus your value. Not usually normal, even for a relationship, not for maybe stereotype, but maybe not for other things. Right, the hypothetical situation is just as good as anyone else, and that's what they should be saying, right? So that situation is in depth, right? So that's a big question there, the in-depth situation of rival questions, rival ideas, but finding a solution in the meantime. So the waiting clockwork, the hours to find a solution for everything, just as accountable as anything else, really. So I think that's what we're kind of getting at, and I think that's what we're going to do for this video. I'm going to end it right here, and I think that will be about it for today. It's been 2 hours, 10 minutes. It is July 31st, Friday, 8:03 p.m. PST. So out you go, and you are. Stay peaceful. Stay good.